Alright, my babies, how are we? First things first. Hey, YouTube, why aren't you allowing me to upload? Alright, today's video is self-overcoming versus self-improvement. Conceptually, the self doesn't really exist. Uh, uh, Alright, wait 1 second. Uh, Here you go, dude. The self combines the three elements of your existence, or at the very least, it feeds them. Your three elements of your expression, sorry. That's a, that's a different word. Because effectively what we are a physical expression, a mental expression, and emotional expression. And if I'm not mistaken, they're kind of like esoterically explained through the different stages of chakras, right? Like this is where the feel is, this is where the primitive part is in the stomach, and this is where kind of like the mental part is. The vocal is abstract, right? The thought is abstract. Granted, your mind is connected to consciousness, and it's kind of like it's not one thing. It's just kind of like it's many things. It's not in your head. It's just you're connected to it. And your body's connected to this world, and your feelings are kind of connected to your body and to your mind and to kind of like everything else. But that's not the discussion for now, because like, as a self, what we are is but the portal that connects us to consciousness. So it's like think of this. I see the self as a flow of a river, and ultimately, like the more conscious you are of the world around you, the more connected you are. I don't want to say spiritually, but the more connected you are, you kind of like notice some things differently. You feel things a bit more or a bit uniquely. You understand things, and you kind of start having this like maybe like preconception of things. Like you can tell when somebody's a bit upset or going to be upset. You can tell when somebody, like these minuscule things that kind of like allow you to pre to to pre structure to pre-structure allows you to pre-structure a the environment or the situation, right? Like you can tell what contributes to what and allows that kind of like to be a flow where you're like, okay, I'm looking at this and I'm prepared for what's to come. The only way you can do that is by kind of like having a bit more control and anticipating something. So logic behind my logic behind it. Logic, right? Self has nothing to do with logic, but my logic, because I'm approaching things mentally, that I could actually like explain to you the feel behind the self. But what I'm debating right now is the self-improvement structure. Do we agree? I mean, like I'm telling you what I agree to is the fact that the self is more of a hole that digs into consciousness. And the bigger the, I say, yeah, like I don't know, like it's not about the depth per se of the hole, but ultimately the width of the hole, like how much water and consciousness could actually flow out of it. And that's my connection, the self connection, connecting to the body, the mind, and my emotions in the world, right? So what I'm debating right now is like the self improvement versus self overcoming, and I feel that's where something just clicked in my head. By the way, is self improvement is that small basically like water pipes that you have at the house, and you use them to water your plants. And ultimately, what you need is you need a pump, right? You need like an actual like water pump for the water to come out fast, or else it will kind of like be dripping slowly. For me, that's self improvement. Self overcoming for me is kind of like instead of a small thin pipe, you kind of get a bigger one, right? And ultimately, almost everywhere, the actual water exists at a higher space, or at the very least, it makes more sense for like the tank that holds the water to be at a higher level. feel that's consciousness, or that's the flow of consciousness. It's not really like up, down, but it's more like wherever there's consciousness and wherever we are, we kind of like are expressing life, so it's coming out. And self-improvement is us kind of like pushing through a small hole, the water, which I'm using as a reference to consciousness. Through a small hole, what we're doing is we're kind of like squeezing things out. So like there's extra energy, there's force, and ultimately there's a bit of damage on sides. The pump kind of like requires maintenance. The pipes are going to experience pressure, right? And all these things, and pressure that's not necessarily natural pressure. Whilst on the other side, though, what I'm saying is the self-overcoming, because you're overcoming the current boundaries of yourself, right? Instead of self-improvement, which is kind of like refining the pipe, refining the exit point and entry point of the pipe, adding a bigger pump. All of these are kind of like improving on the process of how water goes from somewhere to another. Yes, that's what improvement is. The truth is, if you overcome, that means you kind of like, let's just take a simple connection, which is basically that we have a water source here, and it can always go up because water naturally flows down. It would not be smart for us to kind of like have water down and raise it up. That that's unnatural. That's unnatural. And anytime our thought process is kind of like being limited by that kind of structure, that means we're doing something wrong. Or anytime our thought process is not following the path of least resistance, then we're doing something wrong. So that rational approach is basically like, there's a water source, and this is where I want the water to go out. This is the universe, consciousness, life, God. This is the expression. And it flows, right? Naturally. So there's a pipe to it. And let's just say it's this thick. I don't know. This is a lighter, it's this thick. Self-improvement means at one point, because I'm here and I want to actually like, go to water to go faster, or I want more water, or I want stronger current. I right? Like I don't know what decisions we're going to take, but we're taking decisions for us to kind of like enhance the flow of water, which is improving. By improving, what we're doing is we're keeping the same pipe, but effectively kind of like adding a better, I don't know, there are tips on the pipes that kind of like give you straight water or flush water or like allow you to kind of like drizzle water. There are all these kinds of things. So on one side, between the source of the pipe, you add a pump. On the other side, between the pump and the actual, like wherever the water, between the pipe and whatever the water comes out, you, I don't know what they call it. They call it pipe. It's kind of like the plastic pipe. But anyways, and it kind of like filters out or like drizzles the water, and you get to decide what to do with it. And for me, that's you improving on the process of water from A to Z. Right? And overcoming is you looking at the actual pipe and going like, all right, I want more water. And ultimately, like, where can you, with the least bit of effort, gain the most control? And it's literally changing the pipe because now you're getting a whole lot more. You've saved everything pertaining to the pump and all the other expenses, electricity, sun maintenance, and all that shit. But now you have a bigger hole that kind of is a standard, like you have more consciousness. But at the very least, you are still the door to that pipe. Like you can actually like keep the actual entry point to the pipe. I love it because my grandfather used to press the tip of it, so it kind of like starts getting a bit less water when he did that. And I've like met a friend of mine who has like he had a thicker pipe because he used it to clean cow stuff, cow poop and shit like this. But what he'd do is he's kind of like wrap it in half so that he gets less water while he's cleaning. And then when he wants to give them fresh water, because like he had like 15, 20 cows, he'll just literally open it and within like a minute all the water kind of like fills where they have to drink. So like, there's a lot of these things that he kind of like considered, which is literally a very big like softer pipe than the smaller, thicker one because the thicker ones that can actually handle pressure. So that's my explanation of self-improvement versus self-overcoming. I am a big fan of remembering that we are always looking at the world from the perception of a human being. And this thing that's bigger than us, that's always moving, that's always shaking, that's always kind of like, in that very relevant, I don't know, it's always flowy. It's the whole Tao Te Ching kind of like talks about the Tao being the kind of like the flow, the way that everything kind of like clicks together. The subtle rules, the way I see it, is more of a how kind of consciousness is like listening to where attention is, and it kind of gives it a bit to work with, and it experiences itself through its own self. So self-improvement versus self-overcoming. We can improve a whole lot about something, but it's still that thing. And as long as we're looking at the world from the eyes of a human being, we're always going to be limited to that. I'm not saying we're not human. I'm just saying our perception is beyond what's our perception is based on the consciousness that we're able to kind of like explore. So expanding our consciousness and overcoming what we see as ourselves, because ourself is kind of like our own determined creation, right? What we see beyond that, or as we expand that connection through the self to consciousness, to the universe, to God, our own personal relationship with the life and how the world is, then ultimately that is what allows us to kind of like, explore differently and expand beyond who we are. And so self-improvement is just a refining process. It's not really a different end result process. While self-overcoming is just a new way of seeing things, doing things, and fuck yeah. I love you guys. It's a video. Woo!